When I opened that envelope from the adoption agency, my hands trembling like leaves in an autumn breeze, and read the words, "Application denied due to concerns raised by a family member," I felt the world tilt beneath me. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving only the faint scent of the lavender candle I'd lit that morning to calm my nerves. My husband, Tom, was in the kitchen, humming softly as he poured coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. How could this happen? After years of waiting, of hoping, of pouring our souls into this process denied. And the family member? My mind raced straight to her. His mother, Evelyn. The woman who'd smiled through every family dinner, her eyes always a little too sharp, a little too knowing. I sank into the chair, the paper crumpling in my fist, and whispered to myself, "What have you done?" It wasn't the first time doubt had crept in about Evelyn, but this was a betrayal that cut deeper than any scar from our infertility battles. I'd always tried to see the good in her, the way she fussed over Tom's shirts, ironing them with that old steam press that hissed like a disapproving sigh. But now, as I sat there, the clock ticking steadily on the mantel like a heartbeat I couldn't silence, I knew I had to uncover the truth. Little did I know, her sabotage wasn't just about us. It was about protecting someone she'd hidden for years. Her own grandchild. A child Tom didn't even know existed. Let me take you back, though, to before all this shattered our fragile dreams. My name is Laura, and I've always been the one who holds things together, the quiet glue in our little family unit. Tom and I met in college, back when life felt full of promise. He was the charming guy in my literature class, with that easy laugh that could light up a room, and eyes the color of fresh earth after rain. I was the studious one, buried in books, dreaming of a future with a house full of kids' laughter, echoing through the halls. We married young, at 24, in a simple ceremony under an oak tree in his parents' backyard. Evelyn had insisted on baking the cake herself, vanilla with buttercream frosting, the kind that melts sweetly on your tongue. She hugged me tight that day, her perfume a mix of roses and something sharper, like vinegar hidden beneath the petals. "Welcome to the family, dear," she'd said, her voice warm, but with an undertone I couldn't quite place. Our life together started in a cozy apartment downtown, where the mornings smelled of Tom's burnt toast. He always got distracted reading the paper, and the evenings were filled with soft jazz from the radio. We both worked steady jobs, me as a teacher at the local elementary school, shaping young minds with stories and crayons, and Tom as an accountant, crunching numbers with that meticulous focus of his. We'd talk about kids from the start. 2 boys and a girl, he'd say, tracing circles on my palm as we lay in bed, the city lights filtering through the curtains like distant stars. Or maybe 3 girls. "You'd be an amazing mom." I'd smile, feeling that warm glow in my chest, imagining tiny feet pattering across wooden floors. But the years ticked by, and those dreams stayed just that, dreams. Month after month, the tests came back negative. The doctor's offices became our second home, with their sterile smells of antiseptic and the crinkle of exam table paper under my shifting weight. Unexplained infertility, they called it, as if slapping a label on our pain made it easier to bear. Tom's hand would squeeze mine during those appointments, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on my skin, but I could see the worry etching lines around his eyes. We tried everything, diets, supplements, even acupuncture, the needles pricking like tiny accusations. Evelyn was there through it all, calling weekly with her helpful suggestions, herbal teas she'd read about, or prayers she whispered at church. "God has a plan," she'd say, her voice steady over the phone line, but there was always a pause, a hesitation, like she was holding back words that might sting. After 5 years of heartache, we turned to adoption. It felt like a lifeline, a way to build the family we'd longed for. We chose an agency that specialized in open adoptions, poring over profiles late into the night, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating our hopeful faces. "This could be it," Tom whispered one evening as we submitted our application. I nodded, leaning into his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of his aftershave, woody and comforting. Evelyn seemed supportive at first. She'd drop by with casseroles, her famous chicken pot pie with a flaky crust that crumbled just right, and chat about baby names. If it's a girl, maybe name her after my mother, Rose, she'd suggest, her eyes softening for a moment. But looking back, there were signs. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when we showed her the nursery we'd started painting, soft yellow walls like morning sunshine. Or how she'd changed the subject abruptly, her fingers twisting the hem of her blouse. The process was grueling: home studies, interviews, the endless paperwork that stacked up on our dining table like a monument to our determination. We were matched with a birth mother named Sarah, a young woman with kind eyes in her photo, her belly rounded with promise. She wanted a closed adoption at first, but we connected over emails, sharing stories of our lives. "I know you'll love this baby," she wrote once, and I cried reading it, hot tears splashing onto the keyboard. Tom held me, his arms strong around my shaking shoulders. Evelyn knew about Sarah. We'd told her during a family dinner, the clink of forks on plates punctuating our excitement. She nodded, sipping her tea slowly, the steam curling up like unspoken thoughts. "That's wonderful," she said, but her voice was flat, like a note struck wrong on a piano. Then came the first clue, subtle as a shadow lengthening at dusk. It was a phone call from the agency, their tone hesitant, like they were treading on thin ice. "There's been a flag on your file," the caseworker said, her words measured. "Something about family history. We'll need to verify." I felt a chill, despite the warm mug of coffee in my hands. Tom furrowed his brow when I told him, but we brushed it off as a mix-up. "Bureaucracy," he muttered, kissing my forehead. But Evelyn's visits grew more frequent after that, her questions probing. "Are you sure about this adoption, dear? It's such a big step." Her eyes would dart to Tom, a flicker of something protective, almost possessive. I'd catch her watching him when she thought I wasn't looking, her lips pressed thin. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the nursery instead, the crib we'd assembled together, its white slat smooth under my fingers, the mobile of stars dangling above like a promise of dreams. But doubt gnawed at me, quiet at first, like the drip of a faucet in the night. One afternoon, while Evelyn was over for tea, she left her purse unattended on the counter. The zipper was half open, a corner of paper peeking out. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity, or was it instinct, pulled me. It was a letter addressed to the agency, her handwriting neat and slanted. My heart pounded as I skimmed the words, concerns about stability, hidden family matters. I shoved it back, my breath shallow, but the seed was planted. I stood there, frozen in my own kitchen, the kettle whistling like a warning I couldn't ignore. The letter in Evelyn's purse burned in my mind, each word a splinter under my skin. Hidden family matters. What did that even mean? My hands shook as I poured the tea, the chamomile scent rising in soft curls, but it did nothing to soothe the storm inside me. Evelyn was still in the living room, chatting with Tom about some old family recipe, her voice lilting like nothing was wrong. I forced a smile as I carried the tray out, the cups clinking faintly against the saucers, but my eyes kept darting to her purse, now tucked neatly by her side. Had she known I'd seen it? Her gaze met mine for a split second, sharp as a blade, before softening into that practiced warmth she always wore. "Laura, you're looking pale, dear," she said, tilting her head, her silver earrings catching the afternoon light. "Everything all right?" "Fine," I managed, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Tom glanced up from his chair, his brow creasing slightly, but he didn't press. He never did when it came to his mother. I set the tray down, the porcelain rattling just enough to betray my nerves, and excused myself to the bathroom. I needed air, space, anything to clear the fog of suspicion clouding my thoughts. Locking the door behind me, I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide, shadowed, like someone who'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. The ghost of trust slipping away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tom's steady breathing filled the room, a rhythm that usually lulled me, but now it felt like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't name. I slipped out of bed, the floor cold against my bare feet, and padded to the living room. The letter. I needed to see it again, to know I hadn't imagined it. Evelyn had left hours ago, her purse long gone, but the memory of those words gnawed at me. I opened my laptop, the screens glow harsh in the dark, and logged into the adoption agency's portal. Maybe there was a clue, something in the notes or updates. My fingers hesitated over the keys, the cursor blinking like an accusation. What was I even looking for? There it was, buried in the caseworker's comments. Concerns raised by Evelyn Marie Carter regarding undisclosed family dynamics. My breath caught, sharp and painful. Evelyn's full name stared back at me, formal and undeniable. Undisclosed family dynamics? We'd been open about everything: our finances, our home, our struggles. Tom had even shared stories of his childhood, the fishing trips with his dad, the way Evelyn used to sing him to sleep with old hymns. What could she possibly claim we were hiding? I closed the laptop, my hands clammy, and sat there in the dark, the ticking clock on the mantel mocking my racing heart. The next morning, I tried to act normal. Tom was at the stove, flipping pancakes, the buttery smell filling the kitchen. "You didn't sleep," he said, not turning around, his voice gentle but laced with worry. I forced a laugh, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the mug. Just restless. Thinking about the adoption. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I wanted to tell him about the letter, about his mother's name in the agency's file, but the words stuck in my throat. Tom adored Evelyn. She was his rock, the woman who'd raised him alone after his father passed when he was 10. Confronting her would mean confronting him, and I wasn't ready for that fracture. Instead, I watched Evelyn more closely. She came over that afternoon, a basket of fresh-baked muffins in hand, blueberry with a crumbly topping that smelled like summer. "Thought you could use a treat," she said, her smile as warm as ever, but I noticed the way her fingers lingered on Tom's arm, the way her eyes flicked to me when she thought I wasn't looking. We sat in the living room, the muffins untouched on the coffee table, and she started talking about family. "Blood is everything," she said, almost to herself, stirring her tea with a slow, deliberate motion. "You can't replace that bond." Her words landed like stones, heavy and pointed. I gripped my mug, the heat seeping into my palms, and forced a nod. "Adoption is a bond too," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "It's about love, not just blood." Tom squeezed my hand under the table, but Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line before she smiled again, too quickly. "Of course, dear," she said, but her tone was clipped, like she was swallowing something bitter. The rest of the visit passed in a blur of small talk, but her words echoed in my mind long after she left. Blood is everything. Was that why she'd sabotaged us? Did she think an adopted child wouldn't be family enough? I started digging, quietly, like a detective in my own life. I called the agency the next day, pretending to check on our application status. The caseworker was polite but guarded. "The concerns came from a verified family member," she said, her voice crackling over the line. "We can't disclose more without their consent." I thanked her, my throat tight, and hung up. Verified family member. Evelyn. But what was she hiding? I went through our files, the endless forms we'd filled out, searching for anything we might have missed. Nothing. Our lives were an open book, laid bare for judgment. Then, a week later, the second clue hit me like a slap. Tom and I were at his cousin's barbecue, the air thick with the smoky scent of grilled burgers and the laughter of kids chasing each other across the lawn. Evelyn was there, holding court by the picnic table, her laugh bright, but her eyes always scanning, always watching. I was grabbing a soda from the cooler when I overheard her talking to Tom's aunt, her voice low but urgent. "It's for his own good," she said, her words sharp against the hum of the party. "He needs to know about her before it's too late." Her? My heart stuttered. I stepped closer, hidden by the crowd, but she spotted me and switched topics, her smile snapping into place like a mask. That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Tom was brushing his teeth, the bathroom light casting shadows across his face. "What's your mom hiding?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He froze, toothpaste dripping onto the sink, and turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "What are you talking about?" he said, but there was a flicker of something, doubt, maybe, or fear. I told him about the letter, the agency's file, and her words at the barbecue. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd defend her. But then he sighed, heavy and tired, and said, "Let's talk to her. Tomorrow." The drive to Evelyn's house the next morning felt endless, the road stretching out like a thread pulling us toward an unraveling. Tom gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale against the leather, and I stared out the window at the passing trees, their leaves rustling in the breeze like whispers of secrets long kept. The air in the car was thick, scented with the faint pine from the air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror, but it did little to mask the tension between us. We hadn't spoken much since breakfast, me picking at my oatmeal, the spoon scraping against the bowl in the quiet kitchen, him sipping his coffee with distant eyes. "She wouldn't do this," he'd said finally, setting his mug down with a soft thud. Not without a reason. But what reason could justify sabotaging our chance at a family? Evelyn lived in a modest bungalow on the edge of town, the kind with a wraparound porch and flower boxes spilling over with petunias that she tended like children. As we pulled up, the gravel crunching under the tires, I saw her through the window, moving about the kitchen in her floral apron, the one with faded stains from years of baking. She must have heard the car, because she came to the door before we even knocked, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her smile welcoming, but her eyes wary, like a deer sensing danger. "Tom, Laura." "What a surprise," she said, her voice light, but I caught the slight quiver in it, the way her fingers twisted the towel. She hugged Tom first, her arms lingering a beat too long, then turned to me with a quicker embrace, her perfume enveloping me roses again, sharp and cloying. We followed her inside, the house smelling of fresh coffee and cinnamon from whatever she'd been baking. The living room was cozy, with framed photos on the walls, Tom as a boy, gap-toothed and grinning, his father in uniform, stern but kind-eyed, Evelyn younger, her hair dark and wavy, holding a baby that must have been Tom. We sat on the floral sofa, the cushions sinking under us, and Tom cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about the adoption." His voice was steady, but I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. Evelyn's eyes flicked between us, her hands folding neatly in her lap, the dish towel forgotten on the armrest. "What about it?" she asked, tilting her head, but there was a defensiveness there, a wall going up brick by brick. I couldn't hold back. "You wrote to the agency. You raised concerns." "Why?" My words came out sharper than I intended, cutting through the air like a knife. Tom shot me a look, but I pressed on, my heart pounding. "We saw your name in the file. Undisclosed family dynamics." "What does that mean?" Evelyn's face paled, the color draining like water from a sink. She looked at Tom, her eyes pleading, and for a moment, the room was silent except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. Then she sighed, deep and weary, and leaned back in her chair, the wood creaking under her. "I did it for you, Tommy," she said softly, using the nickname from his childhood. "Both of you, really. But mostly for you." Tom leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Mom, what are you talking about? We've waited years for this. Sarah's due in 3 months. This could ruin everything." She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched his knee. "There's something I've never told you. Something from before you were born." Her voice cracked, and she paused, swallowing hard. I felt a chill run down my spine, the air in the room growing heavier. Evelyn stood up slowly, her joints popping faintly, and walked to the bookshelf, pulling out an old photo album with cracked leather binding. She flipped through the pages, the paper whispering, until she found what she was looking for. She handed it to Tom, her fingers brushing his. The photo was faded, but clear enough. A young woman, maybe 18, with Evelyn's eyes, holding a newborn bundled in a blue blanket. Tom stared at it, his brow furrowing. "Who is this?" Evelyn sat back down, her eyes misty. "That's your sister, Tommy. Half-sister. I had her when I was young, before I met your father. Gave her up for adoption. It was a different time, unwed mothers, the shame of it all." Her voice was barely above a whisper now, the words tumbling out like long-held confessions. "I never told anyone. Not even your dad, until later. But she found me a few years ago. We've been in touch quietly. Tom's hand tightened on the album, the pages crinkling. A sister? Why didn't you say anything? I wanted to protect you, she said, her gaze shifting to me for a fleeting second, then back to him. She is a child now, a boy, your nephew. But things aren't good. Her husband left, and she's struggling. I thought, if you knew, you might help them instead of adopting a stranger's child. Blood, Tommy. It's blood. The words hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. I felt a wave of nausea, the cinnamon scent suddenly overpowering. So you sabotaged our adoption, to force Tom to father your grandchild? Or what taken this nephew? My voice rose, incredulous, but I kept it controlled, the anger simmering like a pot about to boil. Evelyn's eyes hardened. Not force. Guide. You've been trying for years, Laura. Maybe it's a sign. Tom could have his own child with someone who can give him that. The implication hit like a punch, her gaze lingering on me, full of unspoken judgment. Infertility. My fault in her eyes. Tom stood up abruptly, the album falling to the floor with a thud. Mom, this is insane. You lied to us. To the agency. His voice shook, betrayal etching lines on his face. He paced the room, his footsteps muffled on the carpet, and I sat there, numb, piecing it together. The hidden family matters her. Secret daughter, the grandchild she wanted Tom to claim or somehow replace by having his own biological kids. Sabotage to protect her lineage, her bloodline. We left soon after, the door closing behind us with a soft click that echoed like finality. In the car, Tom was silent, his hands shaking as he started the engine. I reached for him, my fingers intertwining with his, cold and clammy. We'll fix this, I whispered, but the words felt hollow. The betrayal cut deep, a wound that throbbed with every heartbeat. Back home, the house felt empty, the nursery door ajar like a mocking invitation. I called the agency that afternoon, my voice steady as I explained the situation, the words tumbling out in a rush. It was a misunderstanding, I said, but they were cautious, promising to review. Tom spent the evening on the phone with Evelyn, his tone low and strained, the conversation punctuated by long silences. I heard snippets. How could you? And this changes everything. That night, as we lay in bed, the sheets cool against my skin, Tom turned to me. I have a sister, he said, his breath warm on my shoulder. And a nephew. The reality sank in, layers of secrets peeling back like onion skins, each one bringing tears. The days that followed blurred into a haze of phone calls and hushed conversations, each one peeling back another layer of the life we'd thought we knew. Tom was distant, his usual easy smile replaced by a furrowed brow and restless nights where he'd stare at the ceiling, the moonlight casting shadows across his face like unspoken regrets. I'd wake to find him gone from bed, the sheets cool where his body had been, and hear him pacing in the living room, the floorboards creaking under his weight. We talked in fragments, over breakfast, the eggs congealing on our plates untouched. In the car on the way to work, the radio humming low to fill the silences. I can't believe she kept this from me, he'd say, his voice raw, like sandpaper on wood. I'd nod, squeezing his hand, but inside, anger simmered, hot and unrelenting. Evelyn's sabotage wasn't just a letter, it was a calculated strike at our future, all to preserve some twisted idea of family purity. I threw myself into action, because sitting still felt like drowning. First, I contacted our lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Karen with sharp eyes and a voice that cut through bureaucracy like a hot knife. We met in her office downtown, the air smelling of fresh paper and stale coffee from the pot in the corner. This is interference, she said, tapping her pen on the desk, the rhythm steady and reassuring. We can challenge it. Get affidavits, prove the claims are baseless. Tom sat beside me, his leg bouncing under the table, but he agreed, his signature on the form steady despite the tremor in his fingers. We spent hours compiling evidence, our medical records, financial statements, glowing references from friends and colleagues. It felt like building a case against our own family, each document a brick in a wall we never wanted to erect. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn's secret daughter. Who is she? How had this shadow family existed without a whisper? One evening, after Tom had fallen into an exhausted sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, the screen's glow the only light in the dim room. I searched public records, my fingers flying over the keys, the soft clicks echoing like accusations. Adoption databases, birth certificates, nothing at first, but then a name popped up, Rebecca Lynn, born in 1978, mother listed as Evelyn Marie. My heart raced as I dug deeper, finding social media profiles. Rebecca's face stared back at me, a mirror of Tom's, same earth brown eyes, same gentle curve of the jaw. She had a son, a boy about 5, with tousled hair and a gap-toothed grin in the photos. They lived 2 states away, in a small town, her posts sparse but telling, single mom struggles, pleas for prayers during tough times. It hit me then. The full weight of Evelyn's plan. She wanted Tom to step in, to claim this ready-made family, bypassing our adoption altogether. Blood, she'd said. As if our love, our years of trying, meant nothing. I closed the laptop quietly, my eyes stinging, and slipped back into bed, curling against Tom's back. His warmth was a comfort, but the betrayal lingered, cold and insistent. We decided to confront Evelyn again, but this time with proof. Tom called her, his voice calm over the speakerphone as we sat in the living room, the curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. "We know about Rebecca," he said, and the line went silent, the static crackling like tension building. Evelyn's breath hitched, audible even through the phone. "How? Does it matter?" I interjected, my tone even but-edged. "You tried to derail our adoption to push Tom toward her child. Your grandchild." The words tasted bitter, like oversteeped tea. She arrived an hour later, her car pulling up with a crunch of tires, her face drawn and pale as she stepped inside. No baked goods this time, no warm smiles. She clutched her purse like a shield, her knuckles white. We sat at the dining table, though it's scarred from years of family meals that now felt tainted. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she started, her voice trembling, eyes fixed on Tom. "Rebecca reached out last year. She's in debt, struggling. Her boy, little Jamie, he looks just like you did at that age, Tommy. I thought, if you knew, you'd want to help. Be a father figure. Or maybe." She trailed off, her fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. "Or maybe what?" Tom pressed, his chair scraping back slightly as he leaned forward. "Have my own kids? Leave Laura." The accusation hung heavy, and Evelyn flinched, her shoulders hunching. "No," she whispered, but it lacked conviction. "I just wanted what's best. A real grandchild, one with our blood." There it was, the core of it, her prejudice against adoption, wrapped in outdated notions of legacy. I stood up, unable to sit still, and paced to the window, the sunlight filtering through in dusty beams. "You've poisoned our chance," I said, turning to face her. "The agency is reviewing, but Sarah might back out. All because you couldn't accept us building a family our way." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no pity, only a hollow ache. Tom was the one who laid down the ultimatum. "Retract your letter," he said, his voice firm. "Call the agency, tell them it was a mistake. And introduce me to Rebecca properly, no more secrets." Evelyn nodded, wiping her cheeks with a tissue from her purse, the crinkle soft in the quiet room. She left soon after, her footsteps heavy on the porch, the door closing with a finality that echoed through the house. We didn't stop there. I reached out to Sarah myself, via email, my words careful and honest. "There's been family drama," I wrote, "but we're committed. We want this more than anything." Her response came the next day, tentative but kind. "I trust you. Let's move forward." Relief washed over me, warm as sunlight, but tempered by caution. Tom met Rebecca a week later, a neutral coffee shop halfway between us, the air scented with espresso and fresh pastries. He came home quieter, but with a photo of Jamie on his phone, the boy's smile infectious. "He's family," Tom said, and I nodded, pulling him close, our foreheads touching. But the wound festered. Evelyn's retraction helped. The agency cleared our file, the process resuming with cautious optimism. Yet trust was shattered, fragile as glass. Family dinners became strained. her apologies ringing hollow against the backdrop of what she'd done. As the weeks unfolded, the ripples of Evelyn's betrayal spread outward, touching corners of our lives we hadn't anticipated. Word got out slowly at first, like a whisper carried on the wind, but in a small town like ours, secrets have a way of blooming into full-blown stories. It started with Tom's aunt, the one from the barbecue, calling to check in one evening. Her voice over the phone was hesitant, laced with that faux concern that masks curiosity. "I heard about Evelyn's letter," she said, the words hanging awkwardly. Tom put her on speaker, his face tightening as he stirred his tea, the spoon clinking rhythmically against the mug. I sat across from him, folding laundry on the table, the fresh scent of detergent doing little to ease the knot in my stomach. "How did you know?" Tom asked, his tone flat. She paused, the line crackling faintly. "Evelyn mentioned it at Bridge Club. Said she was trying to protect the family. Something about a long-lost daughter." The revelation hit like a fresh wound, and Tom ended the call soon after, his hand slamming the phone down just a bit too hard. Bridge Club of all places. Evelyn's weekly gathering with the neighborhood ladies, where tea and cards masked the real game. Gossip. By the next day, the calls multiplied. Cousins, old family friends, even our pastor, each one tiptoeing around the edges of what they'd heard. "We're praying for you," they'd say, but their voices carried that undercurrent of judgment, as if our adoption plans were now tainted goods. At work, it crept in too. I was in the staff room at school, pouring coffee from the communal pot, the bitter aroma mixing with the faint chalk dust that always lingered in the air. My colleague, Mrs. Harlan, sidled up, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "Laura, is it true? About Tom's mother and the adoption?" She whispered it, but heads turned anyway, the room falling into that unnatural quiet. I forced a smile, my grip tightening on the mug until the heat burned my palm. "Family matters," I said simply, excusing myself to my classroom, where the colorful posters on the walls mocked my inner turmoil. The kids were a bomb, their innocent questions about spelling and recess pulling me back to the present, but even there, the weight pressed down. Tom faced it at his office, the accounting firm, where cubicles buzzed with quiet efficiency. His boss pulled him aside one afternoon, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like persistent doubts. "Heard there's some family drama," the man said, clapping Tom on the shoulder with that awkward camaraderie. "If you need time off." Tom nodded, but later he told me how the whispers followed him, colleagues glancing over petitions, their conversations halting when he approached. It wasn't malice, exactly, but pity mixed with intrigue, the kind that makes you feel exposed, like a nerve laid bare. Evelyn bore the brunt, though, and in a way that surprised me. She called one night, her voice small and broken over the line. "They're saying I meddled, that I'm a controlling old woman," she said, the words punctuated by sniffles. At church, even Mrs. Ellis gave me the cold shoulder during coffee hour. I pictured her there in her Sunday best, the scent of hymns and polished pews around her, facing the silent judgment of her peers. Tom took the phone, his expression softening despite everything. "You brought this on yourself, Mom," he said gently, but there was steel beneath it. "You have to own it." The public unraveling peaked at a family gathering, a cousin's birthday party we debated skipping, but attended for appearance's sake. The backyard was strung with lights, the air thick with barbecue smoke and children's laughter, but tension hummed underneath like an unseen current. Evelyn arrived late, her steps hesitant on the grass, a store-bought cake in her hands instead of her usual homemade. Whispers followed her, eyes darting. Tom's aunt pulled her aside near the picnic table, their voices low but audible in snatches. "How could you interfere like that?" Evelyn's shoulders slumped, her face crumpling as she set the cake down with trembling hands. I watched from afar, nursing a glass of lemonade, the tartness sharp on my tongue. Part of me wanted to gloat, to see her face the consequences she'd sown, but it felt hollow. This wasn't vengeance, it was justice, slow and inevitable, like dawn breaking after a long night. Tom joined the conversation eventually, his presence drawing others in. "It's true," he said calmly, addressing the small circle that had formed. Mom wrote to the agency to stop our adoption. Because she has a daughter she never told me about, a half-sister, and a grandson she wanted me to prioritize. Gasps rippled through the group, Forks pausing mid-bite. Evelyn stood there, tears streaking her cheeks, but she didn't deny it. "I was wrong," she murmured, her voice barely carrying. "I thought I was protecting our bloodline, but I hurt the family I love." The admission hung in the air, shifting the dynamic. Some nodded sympathetically, others shook their heads, but the truth was out, laid bare under the string lights. We left early, the car ride home silent except for the hum of the engine. "She looked broken," Tom said finally, his hands loose on the wheel. "She is," I replied, staring at the passing streetlights, their glow blurring in my vision. But in that brokenness, there was a seed of accountability, a step toward mending what could be mended. The community fallout lingered, but it also brought unexpected support. Friends rallied, sending cards and meals, lasagnas with bubbly cheese, salads crisp and fresh. Our pastor visited, his Bible tucked under his arm, offering words of grace without prying. Even at school, colleagues shared their own stories of family strife, creating a quiet bond. Evelyn withdrew for a time, her bridge club invitations declined, but she started therapy, Tom told me, her sessions a quiet admission of need. Through it all, our adoption process inched forward, the agency's trust rebuilt document by document. Sarah's emails grew warmer, sharing ultrasound photos that made my heart swell. The public consequence had stripped away illusions, forcing us all to face the raw edges of our relationships. Healing didn't come all at once, like some sudden dawn breaking through the clouds. It crept in slowly, in the quiet moments between the chaos, piecing us back together one fragile thread at a time. After the family gathering, where Evelyn's confession had laid everything bare under those twinkling lights, Tom and I drove home in a silence that wasn't angry anymore, just tired, worn down like an old path we'd walked too many times. The streetlights flickered past, casting intermittent glows on his face, highlighting the lines of exhaustion around his eyes. When we got inside, he pulled me into a hug in the hallway, his arm strong but his hold gentle, as if afraid I'd break. "We're going to be okay," he whispered into my hair, the scent of barbecue smoke still clinging to his shirt. I nodded against his chest, feeling the steady thump of his heart, but okay felt distant, like a horizon we were still chasing. The first step was distance. We set boundaries with Evelyn, not out of spite, but necessity, like pruning a tree to let it grow stronger. Tom told her over coffee one morning, just the two of them at her kitchen table, the same one where she'd baked countless pies and harbored her secrets. "We need space, Mom," he said, his voice even, stirring his mug slowly. She nodded, tears glistening but not falling, her hands folded in her lap like a penitent. "No more unannounced visits, no more probing questions about our plans." She agreed, her voice small, and started sending texts instead, simple ones like, "Thinking of you," with a heart emoji, tentative bridges over the chasm she'd created. For me, healing meant reclaiming our dream. The adoption process, once stalled like a car in mud, began to move again. Sarah and I spoke on the phone for the first time, her voice warm and a little nervous, laced with the soft lilt of her southern accent. "I've been scared," she admitted, the line crackling faintly as if echoing her uncertainty. "But your email, it felt honest." We talked for an hour, sharing stories, the way her baby kicked at night like a tiny drummer, how I'd painted the nursery walls with stars because I wanted our child to dream big. By the end, laughter mingled with the tears, and she said, "I know this is right." That call was a balm, soothing the raw edges of doubt Evelyn had inflicted. Tom dove into his new family ties with a cautious curiosity. He met Rebecca again, this time with me by his side, in a park halfway between our homes. The air was crisp with autumn, leaves crunching underfoot like nature's confetti, and little Jamie ran ahead, his giggles carrying on the breeze. Rebecca was reserved at first, her eyes, so like Tom's, guarded as she pushed Jamie on the swing, the chains squeaking rhythmically. "Mom told me bits," she said, glancing at us over her shoulder. I'm sorry if it caused trouble. We sat on a bench, sharing thermoses of hot chocolate, the steam rising in lazy swirls. Tom asked about her life, his questions gentle, and she opened up slowly. The teenage pregnancy, the adoption she'd regretted but accepted, the struggles as a single mom. Jamie toddled over, offering a sticky hand, and Tom lifted him onto his lap, the boys' laughter breaking the tension like sunlight through branches. It wasn't instant kinship, but it was a start. We helped where we could, sending care packages, toys for Jamie, even financial advice from Tom's accounting expertise. Evelyn joined one visit, her presence awkward at first, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong spot. But seeing her grandson, her face softened, the lines of regret easing as she read him a story, her voice steady and warm. "Grandma's here," she murmured, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of the woman I'd once admired. Back home, we rebuilt our routines, infusing them with intention. Mornings became sacred again, Tom making coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, me grading papers at the table with the radio playing soft tunes. We attended counseling, a neutral space with soft chairs and a therapist whose voice was calm as a still pond. "Betrayal reshapes trust," she said, her pen scratching notes on a pad. We unpacked it all, my resentment toward Evelyn, Tom's conflicted loyalty, the infertility grief we'd buried under adoption hopes. Sessions ended with homework, date nights, where we'd walk hand in hand through the park, the evening air cool on our skin, talking about futures instead of pasts. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and pinks, Tom turned to me. "I choose us," he said simply, his fingers interlacing with mine, rough from yard work but comforting. "No matter what." Those words were a turning point, a quiet vow that mended the deepest cracks. Evelyn's redemption came in fits and starts. She volunteered at the local adoption support group, sharing her story anonymously at first, her voice trembling over the phone when she told us. "I see now how wrong I was," she said during a rare dinner at our house, the table set with her pot pie, the crust golden and flaky. Adoption isn't less, it's love in its purest form. We didn't forgive overnight, but we nodded, the clink of forks a tentative harmony. As Sarah's due date approached, excitement built like a gathering storm, joyful, electric. We packed hospital bags, the zippers rasp a promise of change, and when the call came, we drove through the night, the highway humming beneath us. The baby, a girl with tiny fists and a cry like a melody, was placed in my arms, her skin soft as petals, her eyes blinking up at me in wonder. Tom stood beside me, tears streaming, his hand on my shoulder. "Our daughter," he whispered, and in that moment, the sabotage, the secrets, faded like old ink. We named her Rose, after Evelyn's mother, a gesture of grace that brought Evelyn to the hospital room, her eyes wide with awe as she held her granddaughter. "Thank you," she murmured, and I saw the lesson etched in her face. Family isn't just blood, it's the bonds we choose, the forgiveness we offer. Healing wrapped us gently, turning pain into strength, like a scar that reminds, but doesn't hinder. Life moved forward, richer for the trials, with laughter echoing in our home once more. As I sit here now, rocking little Rose in her nursery, the soft glow of the star-shaped night light casting patterns across the walls, I can't help but trace the journey that brought us here. The betrayal, the secrets, the way Evelyn's actions shook the very foundation of our family, it all feels like a storm we weathered, leaving us stronger, like trees that bend but don't break. The scent of baby powder lingers in the air, mixing with the faint lavender from the candle I lit earlier, and Rose's tiny breaths, steady and warm against my chest, are a reminder of the miracle we fought for. Tom's asleep on the couch downstairs, his accounting ledgers forgotten for once, a soft smile on his face when I last checked. This piece, hard-won and precious, is what I hold on to. Looking back, I see the lessons woven through the pain. Evelyn's sabotage came from a place of fear, a belief that blood defined family, but she learned slowly, imperfectly, that love builds bonds stronger than lineage. Her tears when she held Rose, The way she whispers, "Grandma loves you," now show a heart changed, if not fully healed. For Tom and me, the hurt taught us to choose each other, to build trust brick by brick, even when the ground felt unsteady. And for me, alone, it showed me my own strength, the quiet resolve to keep moving forward, to hold space for forgiveness without erasing the scars. I wonder, as I share this with you, what you'd have done in my place. Would you have confronted Evelyn sooner, demanded answers with a louder voice? Or would you have walked away, cutting ties to protect your heart? Family is messy, isn't it? It's love and pain tangled together, like threads in a quilt that's beautiful despite its flaws. Tell me in the comments, what's a betrayal you faced and how did you find your way through? Your stories keep this space alive, reminding us we're not alone. If this touched you, hit that subscribe button and join our little community. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, hold your loved ones close and remember, family is what we make it, through every storm and every sunrise.